The Walt Disney Company was formed almost 100 years ago, and in that time since, it has become an entertainment behemoth that has undoubtedly changed the face of American media and culture. With an impact like that, you could say that the Walt Disney name is priceless. Except there was a price, and Disney paid it. As much as we all love Disneyland today, the idea wasn't always widely accepted. When Walt tried to originally purchase land for a Disney-themed amusement park in the early 1950s, Disney stockholders sued to stop the purchase and won. They felt that Walt Disney Productions was in the film and animation industry, not the amusement park industry. To buy land for an amusement park would be a misuse of company money. Walt, on the other hand, argued that they were in the entertainment industry and that Disneyland would be a totally new concept in entertainment. So to avoid letting shareholders block his plans again and seeking the funding he would need for this Disneyland, Walt formed a new separate company to be named Walt Disney Incorporated. However, fearing that it would be too confusing what with Walt Disney Productions existing, Roy Disney and Disney's lawyers urged him to change the name. Instead, he would use his initials. And so on December 16, 1952, he formed WED Enterprises. Now today, we largely remember WED for their work on some of the most memorable theme park attractions in the world. However, there was also a personal services branch of the company, and it would not only be the key to WED working, but it would be a source of tension between Walt and Roy for years. You see, Walt granted WED his own naming rights, and in turn, WED licensed the Walt Disney name to Walt Disney Productions for a 10% royalty on all merchandise and up to a 15% share of every Disney project that he chose to invest in, which happened pretty often. Walt argued that this move would ultimately be a good one for everyone involved. Walt would get the funding for his Disneyland project without having to worry about Disney Productions shareholders. He would also secure a financial future for his family after he was gone. In return, with WED licensing Walt's name, it would ensure that Walt Disney Productions would be able to continue to use the name long after he died, without the mess of estate rights and stuff like that. Roy, however, was not pleased. With the ownership of WED being split between Walt and his two daughters, Walt and his immediate family were now about to financially benefit from the Disney name in a way Roy and his family couldn't. Beyond that, there was a question as to whether the move was ethical. The formation of the company was only approved by the Walt Disney Productions Board of Directors, and so none of the company's shareholders had any say in the costly fees Disney would now have to start paying to Walt. As most of us know, WED would go on to develop Disneyland, and despite a rocky opening day, the theme park would go on to be a massive success and change the amusement park industry forever. That success is why in 1963, Walt Disney Productions felt it was time to revisit the Disney-WED deal. With the company growing, there was more risk than ever before that a shareholder would sue the company over the questionable formation of WED Enterprises. The negotiations lasted over a year and oftentimes got pretty heated. On February 5, 1965, however, Walt Disney Productions would buy the design and architecture portion of WED Enterprises. Walt would get a 10-year extension on the ownership of the Disneyland Railroad and monorail, and he would also get to keep his naming royalty contract. Since Disney Productions now owned WED Enterprises, the remaining business dealings would operate under a new name, WED Enterprises, which was Walter spelled backwards. WED would continue to operate at Walt Disney Productions until 1986, when it was renamed to its current name, Walt Disney Imagineering. The deal would remain for the following 17 years, and in early 1982, WED Enterprises, which at that point was owned by Walt's wife Lillian and their two daughters Diane and Sharon, would sell Walt's naming rights and rights to the Disneyland Railroad and monorail to the Walt Disney Company. The price? 818,461 shares of Disney stock, which at the time were worth $42.6 million. Today, those shares after 3 splits would be worth over $1.1 billion. Retlaw would actually continue to operate through the 80s, 90s, and early aughts. While their ties to the Disney Company were severed, the company had purchased numerous television stations and pieces of real estate over the years. In 1999, Retlaw sold its television stations, and in 2005, what was left of Retlaw Enterprises was folded into the Walt Disney Family Foundation. Rent law is an often overlooked piece of Disney history, but it's an important one. It was the foundation upon which Disneyland was built. It both caused a rift within his family and secured its financial future at the same time, and it even put a price on the Walt Disney name. If you like this video and want to know more about WED and rent law and the feud between Walt and Roy during those years, I highly suggest checking out Roy Disney's biography, Building a Company by Bob Thomas. You can find a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.